Now, there is a whole space opera sequence. 10, 12 million years it'll be in the lifetime of one individual here and there. Not everybody's been through space. This is a rare one. This is only the bums, the tramps. Sometimes you find a person on this line who has been a galactic police officer or a system police officer and so on. Well-trained police officer. He's supposed to look after this sort of thing. The most novel and wonderful police methods you've ever encountered, you'll find there. But what happened to spacemen, to get back on that, because you're going to have to resolve some of these spaceman cases, I'm sorry to say. You will probably be perfectly conversant with this after a while. As wild as it sounds, me standing here and telling you nonchalantly that about 12 million years ago, there are probably 2 or 3 people in this room 12 million years ago, or 10 million years ago, or 8 million years ago were sailing around. And there's certainly at least one person in this room that's blown up the planet and killed everybody on it. Your spaceman, because of the liability of such freedom of motion, was quite ordinarily drugged into his passage. So he'd come off of one space wagon, the Belisarius 16 or something of the sort. He'd walk off this space can and turn himself in and go on a wild drunk in town, shoot up the town, get in trouble with the police, have it throw him out, something of the sort. He'd walk back out to the spaceport, take a look at the gangway, walk up the gangway. Medical officer on the thing says, step this way. He steps into a cabinet or he lies down in a bunk. Quite ordinarily, the spaceship's bunks were equipped this way. He'd lie down in the bunk and a gong, something would ring, and he'd go out like a light. He'd get an implant. There is a barrier between you and your officers. Or there is a barrier between you and the men. They did the officers too. There's a barrier between you and your officers, and you shall not attack officers, and you shall obey officers, you shall obey petty officers, and you are loyal and faithful to the good ship Belisarius 16. Of course, this gets tangled up after a while because there was the Belisarius 14 and the Arcton 18, the Graviton 14, and the XL 394, and there's this one, and there's that one, and there's another one, and there's ships, and every time he reported aboard for a new cruise, he got an implant. And it gets boresome after a while. These implants only ball up on the track, by the way, when he started giving his men implants too, or something of the sort. Overt act, so on. Otherwise, these things are sleepers, and they audit out rather rapidly, rather easily. They were implanted only to trigger in case he mutinied on that ship. And sure enough, they didn't trigger otherwise. Now, you'll find on the space opera chain a number of accidents. Spaceship hits atmosphere. Believe me, it burns. You don't get many crashes with spaceships, but you sure got to get a lot of cremations. You ever see a meteor hit the atmosphere up here? It burns, doesn't it? Well, a spaceship burns the same way. Skin gets hot, hotter. Everybody's gone. Now, sometimes you'll find some spaceman that was riding a series of controls, and the ship is getting hotter and hotter, and he's trying to stop the speed of the ship, and then all of a sudden he's gone. And he'll hang up in that incident. You can't audit anything else on the track until you hit that incident. He's still trying to stop all motion there, and it's hot, and a lot of other things. There are other things that happen. He runs into a shower of meteorites. He goes off course, something like that, leaves an ensign or something navigating on the bridge. And all of a sudden, there he is in his bunk, and he hears clang, clang. It's the meteor gong. He no more than gets up. The meteors come through the bulkhead, go by the doors. He starts to grab for his cap, and all of a sudden, he's in empty space, and 2 meteors cut him in half, and phew, he's gone. And it's not a comfortable death. So it's surprising, too, because they happen so fast. In other words, there are all sorts of cataclysms. Now, on some of these space opera lines, you will find guys getting trapped on heavy gravity planets or marooned. And that's a serious one, very often, because they'll spend the rest of their lifetime trying to get off of it, and they'll go on for lives, and it'll crop up later on. They'll think of being in some place, and that's just horrible to them. And if that has happened to anybody, of course, when they died, they generally reported back to headquarters. But by the time space opera came along for most people, they were totally accustomed to forgetting the last life. That was a good solution. Nobody put them to work glazing anymore. Well, now, as wild as all of this sounds, I'm talking about not so much romance as I am auditing. You certainly better be prepared to audit this stuff, because you could avoid it, you'll avoid the pre-clear. Now, there's all sorts of weird ones in space opera. Normally, you don't find very many incidents, though, hanging up. Space of millions of years, there's only 2 or 3 incidents serious enough to fall up in the maybes. You'll find each one is one of these